So first of all, welcome. This presentation is the iPad Piano Teacher, Effective Teaching with Your Favorite Apps. My name is David Love, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself. I am a very, very happy married man. This is my beautiful wife, Danae, and our first and only son so far, named Hiram. He's now 18 months old. Really, really cute, fun kid. We love having him in the family. I'm gonna make sure my webcam, okay, there we go. If I can see myself, then I know you can see me, so there we go, it's right there. We've been married for a few years now, and we've both been teaching piano almost from the beginning. To tell you a little bit about me, I graduated from BYU, Idaho in piano performance and composition, and I took a liking to the iPad early on and began using it in lessons about 2 years ago. And that's when I really could see the potential that it had. The apps for music that were coming out in the beginning were kind of weak. You saw a lot of fake pianos coming out on the iPad, and I never used those, but that's all you could really find in the beginning. But now there's a variety of excellent apps to use, and so today we're going to be talking about how to use those more effectively. So this is a picture of my workplace. This is my studio. My wife actually teaches right behind me here on our Yamaha Clavinova. This is what we started teaching on. I know it's not a grand. I'm sure lots of you teach on grand pianos, which is our dream someday. But this beautiful Kauai that you see in front of you sounds beautiful. It's a great tool to work on, and my kids love it. So that's a lot of fun. Now, this is one of our Music Tech Time stations. And by the way, for those that are just logging on, we've had about 15 people just jump on. I'm just giving an introduction to myself. Once again, I'm David Love. We haven't officially started, just want to welcome everyone still. So make yourself comfortable in your in your office, in your living room as you watch this. And once again, this is just kind of an introduction to myself as we get started here. All right. So I saw a lot of questions come in. We did a Survey Monkey poll just before this began, and many of you took that. And there's one question on there that someone wanted to know kind of how do we set up things in our studio. And this is how we do it. We have weekly lessons, as most everyone do. We do half hour. We do 45-minute and hour-long lessons. We are trying to move away from the half-hour private lesson. We feel that 45 is more valuable. But that's a subject for another day. So we have private lessons. We have MTT, which is Music Tech Time. These are stations where the kids are, it's basically a computer lab. It's where the kids study privately. Of course, we teach them how to use the software and the programs. It's self-directed time. And finally, we do a monthly group class where we learn about all sorts of different music topics, piano, music appreciation, the periods of music, as you can see in this picture here. Okay, so now that you've gotten to know me a little bit, my wife, Danae, she was an elementary music teacher. So lots of the presentation today is based on that and her expertise that she shared with me, and that we've worked together as a team. I've taught her a lot about piano. She teaches me a lot about education. We merged the two together, and we have effective lessons as a result. Then, of course, she's now working at the university as an adjunct faculty member. She's teaching teachers how to teach now, so we'll hopefully be able to pull that into it. So now I want to get to know you. I'm going to do a poll. This one won't last as long, so be sure to take it very quickly. I'm curious to know where you teach. Where do you currently teach? And you're welcome to mark as many that apply. And we're about 30 seconds, 40 seconds into the poll, so be sure to finish up. We'll wrap that. We'll close that poll at a minute. And perhaps you're just interested in how teachers teach. Maybe you are a parent and you're wondering, what are these piano teachers doing with the iPad in my child's lesson? If that's you, then I hope that you'll be inspired today. Okay, let's close that poll. And share the results. So most of us teach lessons in the home studio. That's how Danae and I teach. We actually have the dream of opening up a music academy here in Rexburg, Idaho. It's a small town, but there's a huge demand for the arts. Most parents have their kids in at least 2 different kinds of instruments at a time, including sports and dance. Very busy children. So we're looking forward to the day that we can open the doors to our music academy here in Rexburg, Idaho. So it looks like the next one is that you teach in a professional music studio. I didn't expect to see that. And then 12%, teaching online Skype lessons. Send me an email after. I want to talk to you about that. I'd like to get into that. You would be the pros at this setup of how conferencing goes. That's great. And then just one more question that I like to ask you is, how long have you been teaching for? Give me about 15 more seconds on this one. Okay. Let me share those results with you. So 0 to 4 years, just a small group, 9%. And the majority looking, 29% of the group today, 30 plus years of teaching. We need to switch positions. You need to be giving this webinar. This is awesome. Great to see. Great to see so much talent and so much expertise in the community of piano teaching. Okay. Now, finally, one last question for you, and we will begin. I'm curious to know how difficult it was to log on. So, you made it. How easy or difficult was it to make it to this conference meeting? This is not looking good, Danae. Danae is my wife, and she's listening in as well. We have 84% of the community so far that have lost a few limbs. That's not good for piano teachers. I hope it wasn't the fingers. Oh, and I have 2 of the same options. Oh, okay, so one of them was supposed to say, I made it, and it was easy. Let's close that poll. Okay, all right. So, good to see that you made it. Okay, let's begin. Feel free to ask questions throughout, of course. I'm not going to be viewing the questions for the next few minutes as I just lecture for a little while, but I will look at those questions after and ask for more questions at the end. I'm always happy to answer those, of course. Okay, so now I can see my screen fully. We'll get started. Oh, I forgot to mention, this is part of the tour right here. Afterwards, we'd love for you to visit our webpage, rexburgmusic.com. This is really for students to find us, but if you have any ideas of how to build your own website, feel free to email me. I just use weebly.com. Check that out. And then facebook.com has been a great marketing tool as we share our students' compositions, we share their performance pieces, and then their friends like those pieces. And as a result, people know about us in the community through Facebook. It's a great marketing tool. That might be a webinar for another day. Okay, all right. When it comes to teaching with the piano, do you ever feel like Olaf when you receive the iPad for the first time? Just so happy. I have an iPad. Now I'm going to be an awesome teacher. I'm going to know how to teach now. After all those years of students being bored, now I finally have the tool that's going to make all the difference. Do you feel like that? The iPad and piano are both so intense. Put them together, it just makes sense, right? Sometimes that's how we feel. Let me show you a simple equation. We have a piano teacher, very experienced piano teacher, maybe someone that's not experienced at teaching piano. We add the iPad, and that seems to equal bliss, right? We might be like Olaf, but quite naive if we think that that's going to make us a great teacher. In fact, we might not be such an effective teacher if we simply just add them together in the equation. It takes a little bit more than that. And that's why I'm giving this presentation today. If you think that using the iPad and adding the piano together is going to make you a better teacher, it's time to let it go and realize that there's more to it than that. We can't just give a student the iPad and assume that it's going to be all blissful. I've tried that before. Here's the iPad, explore some of these apps, and the students are frustrated, they're confused, they don't know what to do. So that's why I'm going to compare elementary teachers to piano teachers. Now, my wife taught, like I mentioned before, she's an elementary school teacher for a few years, and she was telling me about this model of teaching. We're going to talk about that a little bit. But let's first take a look at the piano teacher and maybe the less effective piano teacher in the beginning. Here we go. This is the kind of piano lesson that a lot of students receive. I was fortunate to have two great teachers that did a little bit more than this, but I've seen this happen a lot. You show up, you do your warm-up, you do your skills, you try to pass off songs, fix mistakes, then you might pass off some more songs, and of course new songs are assigned. This is an okay model, of course. Students might progress, but if we're just teaching to pass off songs, we might be missing the point. We should be teaching principles of music where the students can learn to teach themselves. Now let's look at the elementary school teacher. On this side of things, let's look at the effective elementary school teacher. He or she uses something called the direct instruction model. It's objective-driven teaching, and there's constant assessment. So we're going to be focusing on the direct instruction model. I'm curious to know how many of you are familiar with this model. And hopefully I proofed my questions on this next poll here. The question is, have you heard of the direct instruction model before? Take about 20 more seconds to put your answer in. Now at 91%, we're pretty close. Let's close that poll. Let's share the results. So most of you are not quite sure what it is. That's great. So hopefully I have something to offer to you. As you see this direct instruction model, you're going to realize that many of you are probably already doing it just because you're already great, innovative teachers. If you weren't, you probably wouldn't be here today. I've noticed a trend about really good teachers. They're always learning. They're always trying to improve, attending conferences like MTNA or webinars such as this. So for those that have heard of it, I want you to be thinking about how you can, I'd like you to think about how you can apply that to using apps and demonstrating apps. Perhaps it's exactly what you're doing. So this is the direct instruction model right here. Now, if you are an elementary or a general music teacher, perhaps you might know this even better than myself because you've been using it with a classroom. It is a little bit different one-on-one. Basically, you need to know it's standard and objective driven. There's always a purpose in mind. With piano, that would be like saying, okay, this lesson book piece that we're working on is not to learn and pass off the rhythm and the notes necessarily. It's to learn the principle of staccato, how to play it properly using the right technique. Of course, we want them to reinforce their note reading skills, but it's principle-based learning. So that would be the objective. There's 3 main points here. input and modeling, guided practice, and independent practice that are bolded on your screen. Those are the main points that we're going to talk about today. Then, of course, as we go through those different points, you need to know that it's always assessed. Did they meet the objective? Assessment is very important in education. So once again, input and modeling, that would be like, well, let's show you the next slide here. That would explain a little bit better. Okay, so input and modeling is where I do. I'm going to demonstrate how to clap this rhythm, or I'm going to demonstrate where these notes go, and I'm going to teach you a system to remember that. I'm going to show you. Then we're going to practice together. I'm going to be with you every step of the way, and finally, I'm going to release you. I'm going to let you try to figure it out on your own. Of course, I'm going to assess, so if you make mistakes, or if you're having trouble, I'm going to jump right back in and repeat this model again. So it'll be a consistent circle. I'm going to show once again, we're going to practice together, and then, of course, you do it on your own. It's a very simple model, but very effective. And the main principle of it is the gradual release of responsibility. If you hand your student an iPad and you say, hey, here's GarageBand, ready, set, go. If any of you are familiar with GarageBand, that is not an app you tell your student to use who has never had any experience. Well, I made that mistake in the beginning, and I'm going to show you an example in a few moments of what happens when you give your student an iPad and say, ready, go, without giving them instructions. So it's a gradual release of responsibility. With that, let's do another poll question. Considering that previous statement, what do you think? Do rules limit freedom? Take about 5 more seconds to make sure you do that. And vote. Okay, all right, let's close the poll and share the results. So most of you said that no, rules don't limit freedom, and 14% said that they do limit our freedom. So now I want to show you a point why I agree with no, that rules don't limit our freedom. In fact, rules enable us. Last year at MTNA in Anaheim, I went to a session with Forrest Kinney. I hope I'm saying his name right. He wrote the books Pattern Play, and he said, if you had a student come up to the piano and you said, all right, let's rock out to the blues, ready, go, and you're doing this awesome pattern in the lower part, and then they just look at you and they say, like, what am I supposed to do? If you give them all the keys and all the freedom in the world, it's not going to sound very good. They're not going to have very much control of the sound. It could be experimental. Maybe if we're going for 20th century music, that's what we want. And maybe that's okay in that circumstance. But generally, if we have rules, they really do enable us. Let me show you an example. I'm going to broadcast my iPad to the screen. This is not a proven technology. This may or may not work very well. We've tested it out a few times, so we hope it works. Okay, so now in the question boxes, if you could just give me like a yes or it's working, if you can see my my iPad screen here. Yes, it's working. Good, great. Okay, so this is my home screen for my the apps that I use in piano lessons. You'll see GarageBand right here in the lower left corner. So I'm going to open that. Now the audio is going to be poor because it's the microphone picking up the speakers. I tried a number of different ways. I needed a sophisticated sound system, which I don't have at this point. So hopefully you'll get the gist of what it sounds like. Let me show you an example of a student that uses, that I gave the iPad to, that had no idea what, and didn't have any clue of what to do with this app. So they're getting somewhere. They're a promising composer. They're really going to make it in life. if we give them some instruction. First of all, let me before I go on, let me show you an example of a student that did receive instruction. This is an intermediate student that was able to compose this. And by the way, were you able to kind of hear that recording when I played through that? I'm going to ask my wife, Danae, were you able to hear that as well? Yes, I'm seeing lots of yeses. Good. All right. So this next one, you might not think it's that great either because of the sound quality, but try to listen through the static and the obstruction of noise. So now the song visits the A section one last time. We'll have a nice outro. Did you notice a difference? I hope that you did. This student was able to do this really in a few short lessons with a little bit of guidance. And I'm going to show you exactly how in just a moment how to create your own track in GarageBand and how to use it with your students. So let's do a live demo. Here we go. So GarageBand, it got one vote out of all, I think there were 80 people that took the survey on SurveyMonkey, and out of everyone that voted, there was one person that said they used GarageBand in lessons. I hope that changes after today. I hope you can catch the vision of how awesome of an app this really is and how intuitive it is with a little bit of guidance for the student. So if I had a music stand, I'd just hold this up so you can kind of see what I'm doing on my screen. I opened it up from the main screen, of course, and we're going to build a new track. So we just click Add here. And we're going to keep in mind that direct instruction model and the gradual release of responsibility. I'm going to show them first what they can do with GarageBand. For example, that very same piece I just showed you, I'd show to a beginner student and say, look what you're going to have accomplished in a week or two. It might not be the same. It might not be as creative because they're a little bit younger, but they can come up with some really great things. So we're going to limit, and I hope this is the right way of saying it, but we're going to limit their freedom. We're going to make rules not to limit their freedom, but to enable them. So I use this app to teach, let's say the objective today, for example, is let's learn a chord progression. What is a chord progression? How does it work? We're going to choose 4 chords. So in the question box, will someone give me a chord progression? Let's make it a pretty simple one, just for the purpose of demonstration. 4-chord pop chord progression. Who would have one? Someone put one in. Oh, perfect. Christina has one in here. We have the well-known heart and soul progression. Christina has that one in. Any other chord progression suggestions? We have the blues progression. Very good. Very simple. Very easy to use. And let's, I was going to say, let's choose a pop composer that we're going to try to mimic. I'm not that good, but I'm good. Here, I'll show you what we can do with it. So let's do the heart and soul chord progression. Now, on the iPad here, there are these different smart instruments. What these do is they make it so the student doesn't have so many choices of notes. It kind of programs the chord for them. It's very smart in how it creates the harmonies for them. So let's choose, I'm going to have you choose between Smart Keyboard and smart guitar. Let's just have one choice there. Smart keyboard and smart guitar. Someone vote for me. What are we going to use today? Smart guitar or smart keyboard? Let's do the keyboard. We're talking about piano, right? So we click on smart keyboard, and you're going to notice very quickly that all we don't see piano notes. We see a series of chord progressions that fit in the key of C. This can be changed to other keys, but we're going to just keep it in C for now. And we're going to record that progression. We're going to use different autoplay modes. If we have it off, first of all, we play the chord. Can you hear that coming through the audio, hopefully? So we can make up our own pattern. Or however, and so you're going to notice there's going to be a delay in the sound. So if the timing doesn't sound quite right on that, might be why. Let's go to one of the autoplays here. The autoplay is going to make it up for us now. So let's do the chord progression that was suggested earlier. And then we go, what was the next one? Oh, F, that's right. How could you forget the famous heart and soul progression? So what we're going to do now is, with the student, I'm going to show them how to play in time. Now, when you play any of these chords, when you change a chord, you have to change it on the and of 4 if you're in 4/4 time, because it needs time to process. Maybe in this presentation I might need to do it a little bit earlier so that it works, but let's give it a try. We're going to record that progression, and I'm going to choose a different autoplay that I like. Maybe. Okay, so I like this autoplay right here. Kind of reminds me of Adele. So let's do this one. I'm going to record. Okay, so how does your student feel right now? They just wrote a really cool song and they pushed 4 buttons. This is enabling. They're excited, they're learning, and they learned about a chord progression. So now we're going to push this button in the top right, or the top left here, and it's going to go to the tracks. So multi-tracking software is very simple. There's just different lines of instruments. Now that we have our piano, we need our next instrument. Let's add another one. Let's do strings or guitar. Let's vote on one of those. In the questions box, go ahead and vote for what you suggest next. We use strings or guitar. We have strings, we have guitar. It's kind of looking half and half so far. Let's go with strings. And we're going to do the exact same chord progression over the top of the other progression so that the notes work together. Now the rhythms and the patterns might be different, and they might not always blend perfectly, but we're going to choose one of these strings here. So we have cinematic, we have modern, we have pop, and we have romantic. I'm going to choose the pop strings. And once again, there are different auto plays here that the student can choose. And then finally the fourth auto play. I'm kind of leaning towards 2 and 4. I think I'm going to go with 4 just to see what happens. I'm not sure how it's going to work. So this might be a success, this might not be. This is experimental. Let's try 4, and we're going to do the same chord progression and see if I can get those beats changed on time with the delay here, but let's try it out. So we have C, A minor, F, and then G. Now, in the lesson with the student, this would be a really good time to say, well, we just recorded the piano. Can you play those same chords? Can you do that chord progression? So on the keys of the real piano, teach them how to play that chord progression, either as a blocked fifth, or you can include the third if you'd like to as well. It doesn't matter. You can even start showing them voicings for the intermediate students. Okay, let's do this autoplay. And I forgot to mention you can turn off some of these instruments, which is really nice. If you want just a higher sound or lower sound, let's just do all of them. Here we go. Okay, and there we have it. There we have our first orchestral piano piece. Opus number 1 for your student. Of course, it's going to have its limitations in the app. But once again, we're enabling them to understand how chord progressions work by doing this. So at this point, we have 8 tracks, or we have 8 measures. Let's add a few more over here on the side. Let's take this up to about 32. And we're just going to loop the track once. And I'm going to show you how to loop it in just a second. And I'd love to go into more details with GarageBand if there's interest later. For the sake of time, we're going to only just take a few more minutes with GarageBand. So now that we've created a nice loop, it's going to repeat twice. Then, over here, in the second lesson, we're going to start a new chord progression that works in that first A section or first verse, if you will. Now we have piano, now we have some strings. Eventually what we can do is we can come in here, and instead of using a string instrument, we can do something like a keyboard. It's the same piano as before perhaps, but now we're going to write the melody over the top of the chord progression, which can be backwards to some ways of teaching composition. Sometimes we like to start with the melody and then add harmony. In this case, building that harmony first isn't a bad idea. It really gives the student a sense of foundation to improvise on. Then they can make up their melody and see what sounds good with the chord progression. Once again, another way of learning. Let's go back here, and let's just add let's add a little quick drum track, and then we'll hear what it sounds like, and then we'll go on from there. Okay. We have 2 different kinds of drum sets here. We have smart drums, which are going to make a beat for you. We have just a rock kit, all sorts of variety here, just lots of fun things. We can move things around and make it sound exactly how we'd like it to. We always need more cowbell, right? Just a little bit more cowbell. I don't know if we can do that. Okay, so let's just record that in there. And all the timing is already programmed and set up. Everything is going to align perfectly. All I have to do is hit record this time. And then it repeats. Okay, so starting to get a little bit fuzzy there, a little bit too much data going through, but we'll stop there on GarageBand. But can you see how we're enabling our students to create instead of impeding them by just handing them the iPad and saying, here we go with GarageBand, give it a try. It's the same with teaching most music skills. While sometimes it is okay to say, hey, go get messy, make mistakes, see if you can learn it on your own. I don't condone that method. I think that's fine. That's a great way to learn. But with direct instruction and that gradual release of responsibility, we can have a lot of things happen, a lot of effective things happening. Let's go back to the PowerPoint. And once again, at the end of the session, I'm going to show you, I'm happy to answer questions and even stick on a little bit past the hour if anyone's curious to see other features of GarageBand. Okay.
I completely lost you last time if I can hear you.
Okay, so my wife just said that she just completely lost me, and I'm wondering if you can hear me still. If you can, say something in the questions. I can still hear you. You're still on. I can still see your video, whatever it might be. Okay, so Linda Christensen can still hear me. Sam, Faye. Oh, good. That's interesting. I was about ready to do this broadcast from my wife's computer. Good thing I chose mine instead, so that this can work for you guys. This is good. Okay. All right. For the elementary educators, you're familiar with Harry Wong. Very knowledgeable at what he does. And he talks about covering versus uncovering material or principles in education. This was meant for the classroom, but I think it applies just the same in piano lessons. We can relate this to the iPad. We can relate it to teaching artistry, to phrasing, all sorts of different things. It says the role of a teacher is not to cover the material or songs, whatever that might be. The role of a teacher is to uncover. And I would add to that, not for us to uncover it, but let the student uncover it with guided direction. Let them feel like they're in charge of their learning. Kind of take a step back. We're giving them guidance, but they're uncovering on their own. So the effective teacher uncovers a lesson by telling the students up front what the students will accomplish. If you notice, that's why I showed you the two versions of the two different garage band songs in the beginning. One is, okay, this is what you could do. This is what you really can do. You can make something really cool with GarageBand. So we want to show them what they can accomplish. Okay, so I saw a hand raised. So the video got off from the sound, though. Was that the garage, Nicole? Nicole just said that the video was off from the sound. I want to just ask really quickly, was that this video of me right now, or was that through the GarageBand app? I want to make sure that, and if that's the case, that's kind of a normal thing. There is a delay there, so. Okay, so now it caught up. Okay, it looks like it's catching up. Hopefully everything's going smoothly. So many technical things here. Okay, let's move on here. Okay, in that direct instruction model, you saw that below was written constant assessment. We always have to have our eyes open as teachers. We need to be looking at what our students are doing, so we know if they have any misconceptions about the principles we're teaching of music. So we know if they're getting something correct so that we can praise them. If they're doing something perfect, but we're not watching or we're not paying attention and they don't receive that praise, it might not stick with them as long, that skill that they have. There's two different kinds of assessment. There's summative and formative. Basically, summative is formal assessment. It's when we hand the student a test. It's when they go to adjudications and they play for a judge. It's the recital or a completion of a theory book assignment. Those are very formal tests, and we do those at the end of a period of time usually. However, there's informal assessment as well, where we're always, like I said before, paying attention to that student. While I am a fan of occasionally taking a small little break to get a glass of water after 3 hours of lessons, I am perfectly okay with, on occasion, giving a student an iPad and saying, hey, play this app for a while, use this app, go through these levels. However, they need to know how to use that app before you say, ready, set, go. Some apps really are that intuitive, but we have to be careful with that. So we want, as often as we can, we do want to observe and assess. So I'm really excited about this next part to demonstrate Piano Mania. A lot of you mentioned that you're using Piano Mania. Some of you mentioned and asked, is it worth it? Is it worth the subscription? First of all, just from my personal point of view, I have to say yes in a studio. While it could tend to be more expensive for some families that are struggling to even pay for lessons, I believe that if they were to use this and invest in it, they're really investing in their child by using this app. It's incredible. I do have to say also that this presentation today, as mentioned before, is sponsored by JoyTunes, which makes this app. That does not mean that they told me I had to present on Piano Mania. When I started putting the presentation together, I planned on using Piano Mania anyway, and when they were willing to help sponsor it and pay for the hosting costs, it was just a plus for me. They're a great company, and they actually gave me a demo of a new feature that will be coming out later this year that reinforces everything that we've been teaching about. So now I'd like to show you how Piano Mania uses the direct instruction model by gradually releasing responsibility from the teacher, or from the iPad in this case, to the student. Let me pull up Piano Mania Live for you to see. Okay. All right. So my iPad should have just popped up on the screen now. Hoping everyone can see that. Okay. Stacy said that she needed to dismiss herself, and that's just fine. If you need to go, you can always view this recording later. Okay, so here's Piano Mania, the demo, right here in the middle of my screen. Oops, wrong app, but a very good app. I love Rhythm Cat. Here's Piano Mania. Okay. I wish I had a poll prepared to ask how many are using JoyTunes, but I guess in the survey, a lot of you said you were using it. So I'm going to show you new things, maybe review some things you probably already know, just for those that have never seen this app before. It's very basic in how it starts off the student. It is a play-along program, meaning the student will read notes and there'll be background music, and they get to play along with it to help improve their inner rhythm, their note reading skills, and the rhythm, of course. This demo version is just packed with information, so it takes a little bit longer to load, but it's just fantastic. So we'll go into Kate's profile here. I'm going to turn down the theme song. So when you get onto Piano Mania, you first select a profile of many. As you can see, I have all my students on here. My wife and I are teaching about 70 students right now, and hoping to grow, bringing on other brilliant teachers to our team and teaching them our methods of pedagogy. So we're excited to grow. But anyway, in journey mode here, this is where the student begins. And they start off at chapter 1, and it's very easy. I'm just going to go through rocking right here. Once again, if you've used this, you're very familiar with it. If not, enjoy. I think that those that have used this are enjoying this right now anyway. Just lots of fun. So you see there's one note so far. So we are limiting the freedom of the student, sort of. They only have one note. They only have one thing to think about. This enables them. They don't get frustrated or overwhelmed with it, and they can focus on small concepts yet again, just like the direct instruction model. I show, or I do, we do together, and then you try it on your own. Now, the great thing about Piano Mania, as we noticed before, is the assessment. We have the informal assessment where you get a check mark or an X if you miss a note. If you get it correct, you see the stars like bursting out of the note and building up to make the sunrise. Then we have our more formal assessment at the end, which I can't tell you like how great this is and how effective it is with students. It's so helpful to have a second opinion. The student, when I say, hey, you did a great job, my student's like, oh, good. When Piano Mania tells them they did a great job, they're like, yes! They're so excited about it. It makes them want to learn and practice more. It's just great to have a second opinion, someone to back me up when I say, hey, you're off beat. Your timing is only 88%. You could do better. And in this case, I can show them how to improve that. And we can have a lesson in and of itself on keeping a beat using, once again, the direct learning model, or the direct instruction model. Let me show you the new demo. That's going to be the next thing I want to show you. It's so fun. Go back to the menu. So here we have the main screen. If we go over one, we have the library. This is where we have full access to all of the songs. We don't have to have them released one by one. So let's say we want to give our student a little bit more challenging piece and have them try it out, then this is where we'd access that. You can now see in the new mode, we have the new exercises mode, which inside of exercises, you have major skills, minor skills. I like the sight reading. That's really helpful for my students, just random notes scrolling by. And then rhythm, which breaks it down from really basic rhythm to more advanced rhythm. Great features here. Let's go to library, where inside I'll find one of the songs that has the new feature that they'll be releasing soon. Okay, here we go. It's in Musette. So as it is now, you see this button below, play. I don't know if you can see that right there on the screen, but you'll see Learn Song below Play Mode. That's what I'm going to click on. And here in Learn Song mode, it's broken down into simple steps. Step 1 will be only the right hand. It will wait for them to play the correct note, so they're not so overwhelmed by the notes flying past them on the screen, which I really appreciate that addition to the program. And I hope this is as interesting for you as it is for me. This is so fun. This is really great technology. So it will wait for the note to be played. And you can see that I could use a little bit more Piano Mania practice, couldn't I? The more we spend with it, the better we get, the more fluent we get at playing through the music. So that is the new Learn mode. When you pause it, it's nice and helpful that you can still see the notes. So you can pause it and say, hey, what are the notes that are coming up? If you have any feedback on this, how do you feel about this? Please let me know and I'll pass it along to JoyTunes. Do you like the function? What would you do differently? If you have questions, once again, save those questions and I'll answer those in just a few minutes. So that is Piano Mania, and by breaking it down in steps like that, we're gradually releasing responsibility to our students so that they can achieve more and enable them to be great music readers. Okay. Some features about Piano Mania that I should mention really quick. I'm just looking over here at the questions and making sure that I'm answering everyone's questions about Piano Mania really quick. Not all of them, but just a couple. Is you can use this with a real acoustic piano, and you now can hook it up to MIDI devices. So even if you don't have any kind of connection, you just put it up on your acoustic piano, it will hear the notes and it will assess you accurately. It's quite accurate. You'll have to try it out. Then if you have a silent station, like a lab station like we do in our studio, you have them on headphones, you can't have a loud acoustic piano playing during another student's lesson. So that's when MIDI comes in handy. So I just needed to mention that as well. Okay. Oh, here we go. So I think I covered this well enough. How does direct instruction apply? I think Piano Mania is the essence of direct instruction, and we can actually learn a lot about that. How direct instruction works just by using the app with our students, walking them through it step by step. I think that was pretty well covered. And then my next question, just for thought, is how do most apps release responsibility or assess understanding? Well, a lot of them don't. They don't release responsibility. They do assess. A lot of them will assess. A lot of them are tools. The apps that release responsibility would be anything that has level system, like Rhythm Cat, Noteworks, both very great apps. I'm sure you could think of some. You can type those in and say, hey, these apps release responsibility, if you want to comment on those. If it doesn't do this, if it doesn't release responsibility, and if it doesn't assess the student, does that mean it's not a good app? Well, Of course not. I showed you GarageBand, and when you're using an app like GarageBand, that's when you as the teacher need to release that responsibility. That's when you need to show them and demonstrate even more than you do with other apps like Pianomania. So I want to show you the polls that I gave. This is when I asked a question on the SurveyMonkey, the SurveyMonkey survey, and I just said, what apps do you use in your studio? I didn't want to ask what your favorites were. I just wanted to ask, what do you use? So that whatever came to your mind first is what you would type in. So teachers, their number one choice was Pianomania. And I think it's just because JoyTunes really just created a really great app. While I hope that they succeed with Pianomania, I hope other app companies can rise too and create equally promising apps as well. And I hope to see more from JoyTunes as well in the future. This is what the teachers listed. But these other ones are anything that received at least 2 nominations. So YouTube to show your students videos. SiteRead Plus is a great app. I mentioned Rhythm Cat. Noteworthy. I'm going to check that out. I haven't heard of Noteworthy, and I'm excited to check that one out and see what that has to offer. Administration. You wouldn't use this with a student, of course. Music Studio. Great program for administration in your studio. And then Flash Note Derby, of course. I think a lot of us are familiar with that one. The students. What did you list for your students that they were saying were their favorites? Flash Note Derby, Isle of Tunes, which I did download, and is a really fun app, one that you have to work with your student. You can't just hand them Isle of Tunes and say go, but if you give them guidance, it can be a really fun app. Noteworks does release responsibility. Uh-oh. Okay, we're good. Rhythm Cat Pro, Most Addicting Sheep Game. And then if I combine the first, second, and third choices, we see some others added on there. The Most Addicting Sheep Game. That's one you hand your students and say, hey, good luck. You give them a little bit of instruction, but it's good for helping them find a beat. Rhythm Cat Pro. Note Squish. I'd like to try that one as well. I haven't seen that one. And then Dustbuster 2 is another one by JoyTunes. So let's review. Direct instruction is basically 3 steps: input and modeling, guided practice, and independent practice. Basically, I do, or I show, we do together, and then you do. So if we go back to the equation again, we have the piano teacher. We add the iPad. Not quite where we need to be yet, but if we add effective teaching practices, we will have very happy students that will stay in our studios. They'll stay with us for a long time, and they'll become great pianists because they're interested. They're not just learning songs and checking them off, but they're learning true music principles that will help them to be better musicians. So here's your take-home assignment. Choose 1 to 3 apps that you love. What are your favorite apps to use? How will you use them? How will you apply the direct instruction model? How will you be a more effective teacher? Read a book. The iPad Piano Teacher. I hope I'm saying her name right. We've been speaking through Facebook. Lila J. Weiss is how I'd say it, but I hope I'm not saying it wrong. I'll have to meet her at MTNA in Chicago and make sure I learn how to say her name right. Then we have The First Days of School. This is about elementary education, but it has great principles in it. Harry and Rosemary Wong. And then join a group such as the iPad Piano Teachers group on Facebook. The admin is Linda Christensen. So really, it is true that the iPad and piano are both so intense. You put them together, it makes sense. Of course, add in the direct instruction model. Add in effective teaching practices, and we will be happy piano teachers, just like Olaf. Thank you for attending. If you have any questions, now's the time to ask.